retrain your palate, you can adapt to a healthy way of living. Evelyn Stokes.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Thank you, Madam Toastmaster and guests. As she said, I love health, I love food, and I love that food can be a wonderful thing for us and not a negative, as it sometimes is. So we start with the palate. You can actually retrain your palate. And I've put a few components of the palate up here. There are many parts to our mouth, but the wonderful thing about it is that our mouth each day is our introduction into the beautiful world of nutrition, and it is a way for us to give ourselves life and energy. A few small components, the taste buds. The average adult has about 10,000 taste buds on their tongue, and while some parts of the tongue do specialize in the bitter and the sweet and the sour taste, all the taste buds can detect those textures for us. And what's nice is we actually regenerate our taste buds every 3 to 10 days. So what that tells me is that we do at least a week, every 2 weeks or so, we have the opportunity to retrain our taste buds and train ourselves to eat healthier, more wholesome foods. With that, the tongue and then the lips. And taste doesn't just come through the tongue as we might assume. The palate contains many areas that detect texture, temperature, and allow us to like and adapt to the foods that we eat. So we should not only consider our tongue, we should consider our entire mouth, and it is our treasure. I consider it one of our most prized possessions. So how do you retrain your taste buds? First, increase availability. Buy the food. Bring it in your house. Don't bring the chips in the house. I had a gentleman ask me a few weeks ago, he said, how do I stop eating chips? I said, stop buying them. Don't bring them in the house. Keep it very simple. Keep an apple available. Keep a bag of spinach available to you with some sliced tomatoes and a bit of feta cheese. Doesn't that sound delicious with a little balsamic vinaigrette? Those simple type of changes in your life can retrain your palate and actually train you to desire wholesome foods. I can remember really quickly when I started eating healthier, I found out that kale was probably the most nutrient-dense light leafy green out there. I incorporated kale into everything, and within about a month or so, I was beginning to crave kale. Can you believe that? Good raw kale. Live, eat, and breathe with healthy intent. Eat slower. I think that's one of the most important things as we introduce our palate each day into foods that are healthier for us, that are better for us. Take time to appreciate the texture and the taste and the flavor that foods can expose you to. One day, my mother had making a big pot of jambalaya. It's a traditional southern treat, and it has all these beautiful root vegetables in it, like corn and tomatoes and okra, all these wonderful nutrient foods. And so we sat down to eat, and I was eating it very slowly. She said, you don't like my food? What's going on? You don't like what I'm making you? I said, you know what? I want to appreciate what you've made for today. I want to eat a little bit slower and savor the taste and the flavors that you've exposed me to today. And it was a delicious treat. Familiarize yourself with flavor. I think that's one of the most important things. A study at Yale University kind of asked the question, why do we become more addicted to processed foods when foods that are more helpful for us are in our environment, and they allow us to live with more energy and more vitality? And what they concluded was that major is a huge component of the foods that we are more interested in. Flavor, the science of flavor, can really help us determine what foods that we like and what foods we don't like. According to the studies at the Monell Chemical Center in Philadelphia, at about 4 to 5 months old, we actually have an adaptation and an interest in foods that are salty and foods that are sweet. And even our environment can sometimes influence what we consider to taste good. For instance, coffee and beer, while they're bitter and they are often tolerated in certain environments, it's also food. Those are also kind of substances that we also enjoy. So it's also what they concluded was that environment and the foods that we are exposed to and the foods that we experience actually help determine our preference, and not just the foods that are bad for us. So what is flavor? This study defined flavor as a combination of many sensory inputs, and 2 of which are smell and taste. Therefore, we can use these senses to train ourselves to eat foods that are better for us as we appreciate the smell and taste of foods that are more wholesome. And what they also concluded in these studies is that it's not so much the content or the amount of salt or sweetness as we might consider like in a hypersweet foods like cake or chocolate cake, but it's the actual content of sweetness. So what I urge you to do today is go home and slice a pineapple and mix it with some strawberries and really take a minute to appreciate the texture of the pineapple and strawberries and the refreshing sweet taste of the strawberries. And that's personally one of my favorite desserts at home, and I kind of couple it with my omelet in the morning. That's just a couple of tips for you. And so this is an exciting one. Choose foods that are in season. Because when you choose foods that are in season, they're of course fresher. You support your local farmers market, and you also optimize your chances of receiving foods that have more nutrients and have more taste. For instance, butternut squash and carrots, they're good for the eyesight and the skin. You have tomatoes and peppers, which have lycopene that help prevent cancer, and so on. These foods in their specific season will have more taste, will have more flavor, and are better for you. So here is my conclusion. Taste preference can change based on the foods you expose yourself to, you expose your palate to. Okay, so this is the fun, kind of sexy part of eating, because you can make it, it's inevitable, and you can make it very enjoyable for you. So I urge you to appreciate the textures, the taste, the aroma, the sight of foods. Look at the different colors and appreciate the brightness, and search for foods that are in season and look at the brightness of what you're eating. Even think about the farmer. Talk to the farmer and ask him a little bit about how he grew the food, how he came to grow something so huge or so delightful for you, and think about what he did and what the hard work he had to implement to get that food to your plate. So my conclusion is you can change your palate, you can retrain yourself to eat foods that are better and wholesome for you.